Business Studies, Class 12, Chapter number 2, Principles of Management. Guiding Principles of Toyota Motor Corporation. Toyota follows certain well defined business principles guiding its functions. These are 1. Honor the language and spirit of law of every nation and undertake open and fair corporate activities to be a good corporate citizen around the world. 2. Respect the culture and customs of every nation and contribute to economic and social development through corporate activities in local communities. 3. To provide clean and safe products and to enhance the quality of life everywhere. 4. Create and develop advanced technologies and provide outstanding products and services that fulfill the needs of customers worldwide. 5. Foster a corporate culture that enhances individual creativity and teamwork value while honoring mutual trust and respect between management and labor. 6. Pursue growth and harmony with global community through innovative management. 7. Work with business partners in research and creativity to achieve stable long term growth and mutual benefits and be open to new partnership. These principles will guide the company in its Global Vision 2010. This global vision envisages continuous innovations in future, use of environment friendly technologies, respecting and working with different sections of society and establishing an interactive relationship with society. It is clear from the foregoing case that managerial pursuits at Toyota Motor Corporation are driven by principles that serve as broad guidelines for stating the vision as well as the ways to achieve it. Similarly, many other business enterprises have followed various principles in their working over a period of time. A number of management thinkers and writers have also studied principles of management from time to time. In fact, there is a long history of management. Management principles have evolved and are in continuous process of evolution. See box. You can see that the evolution of management though has been very fantasizing. In this chapter we will study the contributions of Frederick Winslow Taylor and Henry Fayol, who, as you have read, are associated with the classical management theory. Both of them contributed immensely towards the study of management as a discipline, whereas F. W. Taylor was an American mechanical engineer. Henry Fayol was a French mining engineer. Taylor gave the concept of scientific management, whereas Fayol emphasized administrative principles. But before we go into the detail of these contributions, let us study the meaning of the principles of management. Evolution of management principles. In tracing the history of management, one comes across various schools of thoughts that have outlined principles to guide management practices. These schools of thoughts may be divided into six distinctive phases. 1. Early perspective. 2. Classical management theory. 3. Neoclassical theory. Human relations approach. Behavioral science approach. Organizational humanism. Management science or operational research. 6. Modern management. Early perspectives. The first known management ideas were recorded in 3000 to 4000 BC. One pyramid built by Egyptian ruler Cheops required work to be done by 1 lakh men for over 20 years in 2900 BC. It covered 13 acres of land and measured 48 meters of height. 48 length meters of height. The stone slabs had to be moved thousands of kilometers of distance. As folklore goes, even the sound of hammer was not heard in the villages in the vicinity of the height of these pyramids. Such monuments work could not be completed without adherence to principles of sound management. Classical management theory, rational economic view, scientific management, administrative principles, and bureaucratic organization characterize this phrase this phase, while the rational economic view assumed that people are motivated by economic gains primarily. Scientific management of F.W. Taylor and other emphasized on best way of production, etc. Administrative theorists personified by Henry Fayol, etc., looked at the best way to combine jobs and people into an efficient organization. Bureaucratic organization theorists, led by Max Weber, looked at ways to eliminate managerial inconsistencies due to abuse of power, which contributed to ineffectiveness. This was the era of the Industrial Revolution and factory system of production. Large scale production would not have been possible without adherence to the principles governing organizing production based on division of labor and specialization, relationship between man and the machine, managing people, and so on. Neoclassical theory, human relations approach. This school of thought developed between 1920s to 1950s felt that employees simply do not respond rationally to rules, chains of authority, and economic incentives alone, but are also guided by social needs, drives, and attitudes. Hawthorne studies at GEC etc. were conducted then. It was quite natural that in the early phase of the Industrial Revolution, the emphasis was on development of techniques and technology. The attention to the human factor was the salient aspect of this school of thought. This attention was to serve as a precursor to the development of behavioral sciences. Behavioral science approach organizational humanism. Organizational humanism, like Chris Argus, Douglas MacGregor, Abraham Maslow, and Frederick Herzberg, use the knowledge of psychology, sociology, and anthropology to develop this approach. The underlying philosophy of organizational humanism is that individuals need to use all of these capacities and creative skills at work as well as at home. Management science or operational research. It emphasizes it emphasizes research on operations and use of quantitative techniques to aid managers to take decisions. Modern management. It sees modern organizations as complex systems and underlies contingency approach and use of modern techniques to solve organizational and human problems. Principles of management. The concept. A managerial principle is a broad and general guideline for decision making and behavior. For example, while deciding about promotion of an employee, one manager may consider seniority, whereas the other may follow the principle of merit. One may distinguish principles of management from those of pure science. Management principles are not as rigid as principles of pure science. They deal with human behavior and thus are to be applied creatively given the demands of the situation. Human behavior is never static, and so also technology, which affects business. Hence, all the principles have to keep pace with these changes. For example, in the absence of information and communication technology (ICT), a manager could oversee only a small workforce, that too within a narrow geographical space. The advent of ICT has expanded the capability of the managers to preside over large business empires spread across the globe. Infosys headquarters in Bangalore boast of the Asia's largest flat screen in their conference room, from where their managers can interact with their employees and customers in all parts of the world. In developing an understanding of a meaningful principle of management, it is also useful to know what these are not. The principles of management should be distinguished from techniques of management. Techniques are procedures or methods which involve a series of steps to be taken to accomplish desired goals. Principles or guidelines to take decisions or actions while practicing techniques. Likewise, principles should also be understood as being distinct from values. Values are something which are acceptable or desirable. These have moral connotations. Principles are basic truth or guidelines for behavior. Values are general rules for behavior of individuals in society formed through common practice, whereas principles of management are formed after research and work situation, which are technical in nature. However, while practicing principles of management, values cannot be neglected, as businesses have to fulfill social and ethical responsibilities towards society. Nature of principle of management. By nature is meant qualities and characteristics of anything. Principles are general propositions which are applicable when certain conditions are present. These have been developed on the basis of observation and experimentation, as well as personal experiences of the managers. Depending upon how they are derived and how efficient they are in explaining and predicting managerial behavior, they contribute towards the development of management both as a science and as an art. Derivation of these principles may be said to be a matter of science, and their creative application may be regarded as an art. These principles lend credibility of a learnerable and teachable discipline to the practice of management. As such, ascent to managerial position may not be a matter of birth but a matter of requisite qualifications. Clearly, management principles have gained importance with increasing professionalism of management. These principles are guidelines to action. They denote a cause and effect relationship, while functions of management with planning, organizing, staffing, directing, and controlling are the actions to be taken while practicing management. Principles help managers to take decisions while performing these functions. The following points summarize the nature of principles of management. 1. Universal applicability. The principles of management are intended to apply to all types of organizations, business as well as non business, small as well as large, public sectors as well as private sectors, manufacturing as well as the service sectors. However, the extent of their applicability would vary with the nature of the organization, business activity, scale of operation, and the like. For example, for greater productivity, work should be divided into small tasks, and each employee should be trained to perform his or her specialized job. This principle is applicable to a government office where there is a diary, dispatch, clerk whose job is to receive and send mails or documents, a data entry operator whose task is to input data on the computer, a peon and an officer, etc. The principle the principle is also applicable to a limited company where there are separate departments like the production, finance, marketing and research and development, etc. Extent of division of work, however, may vary from case to case. 2. General guidelines. The principles are guidelines to action but do not provide ready-made straitjacket solution to all managerial problems. This is so because real business situations are very complex and dynamic and are a result of many factors. However, the importance of principles cannot be underestimated because even a small guideline helps to solve a given problem. For example, in dealing with a situation of conflict between two departments, a manager may emphasize the primacy of the overall goals of the organization. 3. Formed by practice and experimentation. The principles of management are formed by experience and collective wisdom of managers as well as experimentation. For example, it is a matter of common experience that discipline is indispensable for accomplishing any purpose. This principle finds mention in management theory. On the other hand, in order to remedy the problem of fatigue of workers in a factory, the experiment may be conducted as seen the effect of improvement of physical conditions to reduce stress. Flexible 4. The principles of management are not rigid prescriptions which have to be followed absolutely. They are flexible and can be modified by the manager when the situation so demands. They give the manager enough discretion to do so. For example, the degree of concentration of authority, centralization, or its dispersal, decentralization will depend upon the situation and circumstances of each enterprise. Moreover, individual principles are like different tools serving different purposes. The manager has to decide which tool to use under what circumstances. 5. Mainly behavioral. Management principles aim at influencing behavior of human beings. Therefore, principles of management are mainly behavioral in nature. It is not that these principles do not pertain to things and phenomena at all. It is just a matter of emphasis. Moreover, principles enable a better understanding of the relationship between human and material resources in accomplishing organizational purposes. For example, while planning the layout of a factory, orderliness would require that workflows are matched by flow of materials and movement of men. 6. Cause and effect relationships. The principle of management are intended to establish relationship between cause and effects so that they can be used in similar situations in a large number of cases. As such, they tell us if a particular principle was applied in a particular situation, what would be its likely effect. The principles of management are less than perfect since they mainly apply to human behavior. In real life, in real life situations are not identical, so accurate cause and effect relationships may be difficult to establish. However, principles of management assist managers in establishing these relationships to some extent and are therefore useful in situations of emergencies. It is desirable that someone takes charge and others just follow, but in situations requiring cross functioning, expertise, such as heading up of a new factory. More participative approach to decision making would be advisable. Contingent 6. The application of principles of management is contingent or dependent upon the prevailing situation at a particular point of time. The application of principles has to be changed as per requirements. For example, employees deserve fair and just remuneration, but what is just and fair is determined by multiple factors. They include contribution of the employee, paying capacity of the employee, and also prevailing wage rate of the occupation under consideration. Having described the inherent qualities and characteristics of management principles, it should be easy for you to appreciate the significance of these principles in managerial decision making. But before that, you can read the following case study of Kiran Mazumdar Shaw, a highly successful Indian businesswoman and CEO of Biocon. In the accompanying box, you should be able to see how she was able to transform a little known sector of biotechnology into a very profitable company and earn titles which anyone would dream of. From the foregoing story, it is clear that success of Biocon due to the efforts of Dr. Kiran Mazumdar Shaw was not a mere chance. It was a sincere effort which involved application of qualities which are a part of management principles directly or indirectly. Now you can see significance of these principles. The story of Dr. Kiran Mazumdar Shaw is very inspiring. She foresaw the tremendous potential of biotechnology when no one dared to think about it. She started her own company, Biocon India, in her garage with a mere capital of rupees 10,000 in collaboration with Biocon Biochemicals Limited in Ireland. The company is a pioneer in bringing the benefit of high quality yet affordable novel biologics and biosimilars to patients in India and other emerging markets. Today, it is India's largest and fully integrated biopharmaceutical company that develops, manufactures, and supplies advanced life-saving biopharmaceuticals for diabetes, cancer, and autoimmune conditions are at price points that make them affordable and thus accessible. As an innovation led organization focused on providing affordable access, we have leveraged our inherent strengths in advanced science to develop, manufacture, and deliver a rich portfolio of small molecules, APIs, and formulations and complex biologists, both novels and biosimilars, including monoclonal antibodies, MABs, Rh insulin, and insulin analogs. The company's global scale capacities for manufacturing high quality, affordable biologics have positioned the company as the world's fourth largest insulin producer, enabling us to address the growing need of diabetes patients across the globe. As one of the leading oncology companies in India, the company has brought safe, efficacious, and affordable medicines for cancer to cater to the needs of patients, caregivers, and medical praction- practitioners in the country. A part of manage sorry Significance of principles of management. The principles of management derive their significance from their utility. The provider they provide useful insights to managerial behavior and influence managerial practices. Managers may apply these principles to fulfill their tasks and responsibilities. Principles guide managers in taking and implementing decisions. It may be appreciated that everything worthwhile is governed by an underlying principle. The quest of the management theorist has been and should be to unearth the underlying principles with a view to using these under repetitive circumstances as a matter of management habit. The significance of principles of management can be discussed in terms of the following points. 1. Providing managers with useful insights into reality. The principles of management provide the managers with useful insights into the real world situation. Adherence to these principles will add to their knowledge, ability, and understanding of managerial situations and circumstances. It will also enable managers to learn from past mistakes and conserve time by solving recurring problems quickly. As such, management principles increase managerial efficiency. For example, a manager can leave routine decision making to his subordinate and deal with exceptional solutions which require his or her expertise by following the principles of delegation. 2. Optimum utilization of resources and effective administration. Resources, both human and material, available with the company unlimited. They have to be put to optimum use. By optimum use, we mean that the resources should be put to use in such a manner that they should give maximum benefits with minimum cost. Principles equip the managers to foresee the cause and effect relationship of their decisions and actions. As such, the wastage associated with a trial and error approach can be overcome. Effective administration necessitates impersonalization of managerial conduct so that managerial power is used with due discretion. Principles of management limit the boundary of managerial discretion so that their decisions may be free from personal prejudice and biases. For example, in deciding the annual budgets for different departments rather than personal preferences, managerial discretion is bounded by the principle of contribution to organizational objectives. 3. Scientific decision. Decisions must be based on facts, thoughtful and justifiable in terms of the intended purpose. They must be timely, realistic, and subject to measure and evaluation. Management principles help in thoughtful decision making. They emphasize logic rather than blind faith. Management decisions taken on the basis of principles are free from bias and prejudice. They are based on objective assessment of the situation. 4. Meeting changing environment requirements. Although the principles are in the nature of general guidelines, but they are modified and as such help managers to meet changing requirements of the environment. You have already studied that management principles are flexible to adapt to dynamic business environment. For example, management principles emphasize division of work and specialization. In modern times, this principle has been extended to the entire business, whereas companies are specialized in their core competencies di- and divesting non-core businesses. In this content, one may cite the decision of Hindustan Liver Limited in divesting non-core businesses of chemical and seeds. Some companies are outsourcing their non-core activities like share transfer management and advertising to outside agencies, so much so that even more processes such as R&D, manufacturing and marketing are being outsourced today. Haven't you heard of proliferation of business process outsourcing BPO and knowledge process outsourcing KPO? 5. Fulfilling social responsibilities. The increased awareness of the public forces businesses, especially limited companies, to fulfill their social responsibilities. Management theory and management principles have also evolved in response to these demands. Moreover, the interpretation of the principles also assume newer and contemporary meaning with the change in time. So, if one were to talk of equity today, it does not apply to wage alone. Value to customers, care for the environment, dealing with the business associates would also come under the purview of this principle. As an application of the principle, we find that public sector undertakings have developed entire townships, as for example, BHEL has developed Ranipur in Haridwar, Uttaranchal. One may also cite the story of Shri Mahila Griha Udyog Lijat Papar, as can be seen in the accompanying box on page 41. For management training, education, and research, principles of management are at the core of management theory. As such, these are used as a basis for management training, education, and research. You must be aware that entrance to management institutes is preceded by management aptitude test. Do you think that these tests could have been developed without an understanding of management principles and how they may be applied in different situations? These principles provide basic groundwork for the development of management at a discipline. Professional courses such as MBA, Masters of Business Administration, BBA, Bachelor of Business Administration also teach these principles as part of the curriculum at the beginners level. These principles enable refinement of management practices as well as by facilitating the development of new management techniques. Thus, we see that techniques like the operations research or cost accounting, just in time, Kanban and Kaizen have developed due to further research on these principles. In conclusion, it can be said that understanding the meaning, nature, and significance of principles of management will help us to appreciate their applicability in real life situations. As stated at the beginning of the chapter, management principles have undergone a long history of evolution and they continue to evolve. What follows in a description of the management principles pertaining to the classical school, more precisely those propounded by F. W. Taylor and Henry Fayol. Taylor's scientific management. Scientific management refers to an important stream of one of the earlier schools of thoughts of management referred as the classical schools. The other two streams belonging to the classical schools are Fayol's administrative theory and Max Weber's bureaucracy. We will not be describing bureaucracy here. A discussion of Fayol's principles, however, will follow the discussion of scientific management. Frederick Winslow Taylor, March 20, 1856 to March 25, 1915, was an American mechanical engineer who sought to improve industrial efficiency. In 1874, he became an apprentice mechanist, learning factory conditions at the grassroots level. He earned a degree in mechanical engineering. He was one of the intellectual leaders of the efficiency movement and was highly influential in reshaping the factory system of production. You must appreciate that he belonged to the era of industrial revolution characterized by mass production. Frederick Winslow Taylor, founder of scientific management movement, lifetime March 20, 1856 to March 21, 1915. Profession American mechanical engineer. Education degree in mechanical engineering from Stevens Institute of Technology in 1883. Position held apprentice mechanist in 1874. Executive at Midway Steel Company in 1884. At Bethlehem Iron Company in 1898, which later became Bethlehem Steel Company. Professor at Tuck School of Business, founded in 1990. President of American Society of Mechanical Engineering from 1906 to 1907. Writings. The Principle of Scientific Management series of articles published in the American Magazine during March-May 1911, later published in book form. 1. Concrete, plain and reinforced in 1906. 2. Notes on Battling in 1893. 3. On the Art of Cutting Metals, December 1906, for a piece of rate system in June 1895. 5. The Marking of a Putting Green series of articles published in 1915. 6. Not for the Genuine but for the Average Man, published in the American Magazine in March 1918. You must also appreciate that even that every new development takes some time to be perfected. Taylor's contributions must be seen in the light of the efforts made to perfect the factory system of production. Taylor thought that by scientifically analyzing work, it would be possible to find out the best way to do it. He is most remembered for his time and motion student studies. He would break a job into its component parts and measure each to the second. Taylor believed that contemporary management was amateurish and should be studied as a discipline. He also wanted that workers should cooperate with the management and thus there would be no need of trade union. The best results would come from the partnership between a trained and qualified management and a cooperative and innovative workforce. Each side needed the other. He is known for coinage of the term scientific management in his articles The Principles of Scientific Management, published in 1911. After being fired from Bethlehem Steel Company, he wrote a book, Shop Floor, which sold well. He was selected to be the president of the American Society of Mechanical Engineers (ASME). From 1906 to 1907, he was a professor at the Tuck School of Business, Dartmouth College, founded in 1900. In 1884, he became an executive at Midvale Steel Company. By demonstrating his leadership abilities, he instructed his fellow workers to work in phases. He joined the Bethlehem Iron Company in 1898, which later became Bethlehem Steel Company. He was originally employed to introduce piece rate wage system. After setting up the wage system, he was given authority and more responsibility in the company. Using the newfound resources, he increased the staff and made Bethlehem a showplace for invention in inventive work. Unfortunately, the company was sold to another group and he was discharged. In 1910, his health started to fall. He died in 1915 due to pneumonia. A synoptic view of his contributions can be had from the accompanying box on the next page. Principles of Scientific Management. In the early days, In the early days of the Industrial Revolution, in the absence of the established theory of factory organization, factory owners or managers relied on personal judgment in attending to the problem they confronted in the course of managing their work. This is what is referred to as the rule of thumb. Managing factories by rule of thumb enabled them to handle the situations as they arose but suffered from the limitations of a trial and error approach. For their experiences to be emulated, it was important to know what worked and why does it work. For this, there was a need to follow an approach that was based on the method of scientific defining a problem, developing alternative solutions, anticipating consequent measures, progress and drawing conclusions. In this scenario, Taylor emerged as the father of scientific management. He proposed scientific management as opposed to rule of thumb. He broke up human activity into small parts and found out how it could be done effectively in less time and with increased productivity. It implies conducting business activities according to standardized tools, methods, and trained personnel in order to increase the output, improve its quality, and reduce cost and waste. In the words of Taylor, scientific management means knowing exactly what you want men to do and seeing that they do it in the best and the cheapest way. The Bethlehem Steel Company, when Taylor himself worked, achieved threefold increase in productivity by application of scientific management principles. Therefore, it would be in order to discuss these principles. 1. Science, not rule of thumb. Taylor pioneered the introduction of the method of scientific inquiry into the domain of the management practices. We have already referred to the limitations of the rule of the thumb approach of management, as different managers would follow their indigenous rule of thumb. It is but a statement of the obvious that all would not be equally effective. Taylor believed that there was only one best method to maximize efficiency. This method can be developed through study and analysis. This method, so developed, should substitute rule of the thumb throughout the organization. Scientific method involved investigation of traditional method through work study, unifying the best practices and developing a standard method which would be followed throughout the organization. According to Taylor, even a small production activity like loading pegs of iron into boxcars can be scientifically planned and managed. This can result in tremendous saving of human energy as well as wastage of time and materials. The more sophisticated the process, greater would be the savings. In the present content, the use of internet has brought about dramatic improvement in the internal efficiencies and customer satisfaction. To harmony, not discard. Factory system of production implied that managers served as a link between the owners and the workers. Since the managers then they had the mandate to get the work done from workers, it should not be difficult for you to appreciate that there always existed the possibility of a kind of a class conflict, the managers versus the workers. Taylor recognized that the conflict helped none, the workers, the managers, and the factory owners. He emphasized that there should be complete harmony between the management and the workers. Both should realize that each one is important to achieve this state. Taylor called for complete mental revolution on the part of both management and the workers. It means that management and the workers should transform their thinking. In such a situation, even trade unions will not think of going on strike. Management should share the gains of the company, in if any, with the workers. At the same time, workers should work hard and be willing to embrace chance for the good of the company. Both should be part of the family. According to Taylor, scientific management has for its foundation the firm conviction that the true interest of two are one and the same, that prosperity for the employer cannot exist for a long time unless it is accompanied by prosperity for the employees and vice versa. Japanese work culture is a classical example of such a situation. In Japanese companies, Paternal- paternalist style of management is the practice. There is complete openness between the management and the workers. If at all the workers go to strike, they wear a black badge but work more than normal working hours to gain the sympathy of the management. 3. Cooperation, not individualism. There should be a complete cooperation between the labor and the management instead of individualism. This principle is an extension of the principle of harmony, not discord. Competition should be replaced by cooperation. Both should realize that they need each other. For this, management should not close its ears to any constructive suggestions made by the employees. They should be rewarded for their suggestions which result in the substantial reduction in the cost. They should be part of management, and if any important decisions are taken, workers should be taken into confidence. At the same time, workers should desist from going on strike and making unreasonable demands on the management. In fact, when there will be open communication system and goodwill, there will be no need for even a trade union. paternalist style of management whereby the employer takes care of the needs of the employees would prevail as in the case of Japanese companies. According to Taylor, there should be an utmost equal division of work and responsibility between the workers and the management. All the day long, the management should work almost side by side with the workers, helping, encouraging, and smoothing the way for them. For development of each and every person to his or her greatest efficiency and prosperity. Industrial efficiency depends to a large extent on personal competencies. As such, scientific management also stood for worker development. Worker training was essential also to learn the best method developed as a consequence of the scientific approach. Taylor was of the view that the concern for for efficiency could be built in right from the process of employee selection. Each person should be scientifically selected. Then work assigned should suit his or her physical, mental, and intellectual capabilities. To increase efficiency, they should be given a required training. Efficient employees would produce more and earn more. This will ensure that and their greatest efficiency and prosperity for both companies and the workers. From the foregoing discussion, it is clear that Taylor was an ardent supporter of use of scientific method of production in the business.